Something was in my bed. Hey everyone. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. I've always loved reading creepy personal experiences here, but I never thought I'd have one worth sharing. Until a few months ago. This happened back in February, and to this day, it still shakes me when I think about it. I've tried to come up with rational explanations, but nothing adds up. I've never experienced fear like this before, or since. For context, I, 25F, live in a 1930s duplex. My boyfriend and I now share the downstairs unit, but at the time, I was living there alone. He was finishing his lease and hadn't moved in yet. The couple upstairs is quiet and we share a staircase. The house is old, so creaks and random noises are common, but I'd learned to tune them out. The basement's unfinished and creepy, but I only go down there to do laundry. Anyway, on this night, I was alone. It was around midnight, maybe 1 a.m. I was lying on my side, facing the window. The blinds were shut, but the streetlights outside leaked a dull glow into the room. I wasn't asleep, wide awake, just kind of in that quiet, bored limbo before drifting off. Then something happened. Out of nowhere, I felt a sudden, strong whoosh of air right against my ear. It was like someone exhaled directly beside my head. Not across the room, not from a vent. Right in my ear. The windows were shut. The fan wasn't on. There's absolutely no source for air like that. It felt deliberate. Before I could even process it, the sheets behind me shifted. And I swear to God, it felt like someone climbed into bed next to me. The mattress moved. I felt pressure behind my back. The exact sensation of someone pressing against me, spooning me. Like the weight of a second person sharing the bed. I froze. Completely. I didn't breathe. Didn't move. Just lay there, paralyzed in absolute silence. Heart pounding so hard, I thought it would give me away. I can't even describe how real it felt. It wasn't subtle. It was a presence. A very real sense that someone, something, was lying right behind me. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It felt like forever, but in reality maybe 5 or 10 minutes passed before I worked up the courage to turn around. Nothing. The bed was empty. And for a moment, I was relieved. Until I realized something that still makes my skin crawl. The side of the bed that had felt full, occupied, was now clear. That shouldn't have been possible. I'm someone who leaves laundry piles on the unused side of the bed. Always have. There had been a messy stack of clothes taking up that entire half. That pile had been sitting there for days. Now it was all shoved, neatly, intentionally, against the far edge. And next to my pillow, my second pillow was right there, like it had been positioned for someone else to use. That detail is what really got to me. I never moved that pillow. It just stays buried under the laundry pile. But now it was right next to mine, like someone had set it up to sleep next to me. When I told my boyfriend the next day, he brushed it off. Said I probably kicked the clothes around in my sleep and didn't realize, but he wasn't there. He didn't feel the whoosh of breath. He didn't feel the weight behind his back. And he didn't see the way everything had been rearranged when I turned over. Anyway, this probably all sounds insane or even dumb, but I figured this is the place to share it. Such a strange experience. I don't know if I even explained it well, but in any case, I have come up with 0 explanations for this. The strong whoosh, the clothes pushed away, feeling someone/something against my back. It doesn't make sense to me. I'd love to hear if anyone has thoughts on this because I sure as hell don't. The old lady. I live with my girlfriend in a small apartment. Not run down, not fancy. Just quiet and compact. She's a nurse, long shifts, night work, tough assignments. One of her regular patients was an elderly woman with late-stage dementia. Sweet at times, but often unpredictable. Her name was Alma. Alma couldn't really care for herself anymore, and on the day everything started, my girlfriend had been helping her bathe. She told me afterward, Alma had been acting strange, more restless than usual. She was drying her off, asking her to stay seated, when Alma suddenly stood up and started walking. She was still wet, slippery. My girlfriend tried to stop her, warned her not to go near the stairs, but Alma didn't respond. She bolted, naked, soaking, and confused, down the hallway. Then came the crash. She had tumbled down the steps. Hard. My girlfriend ran after her and tried everything, applying pressure to the wound, calling for help, but the injury was bad. A massive gash on her head. Alma was taken to the hospital unconscious. 3 days later, her supervisor gave her the news. Alma had passed, but that wasn't the end. Alma's children blamed my girlfriend, said she was careless, said she should have stopped her, that it was her job to protect her, and she failed. They didn't care that Alma had refused to listen, that her mind had been long gone, that she had been warned. My girlfriend said she couldn't even argue. She just stormed out of the meeting, slammed the door behind her, and came home shaking with rage. Luckily, my girlfriend is used to the demands of her job. She knows that sometimes, no matter how careful you are, things happen. She processed it quickly and found a way to make peace with it. But then something changed in the apartment. It started with a sound. About a week later, we were sitting on the bed, chatting about something trivial. What to eat, maybe. It was mid-afternoon, sunlight spilling through the blinds. Then we both froze. Thud. It was a clear, sharp step on the floorboards. The kind of sound you only hear when someone walks across wood barefoot. It came from the hallway. Just one step. We both looked at each other. "Did you hear that?" I asked. She nodded, like a footstep. I got up and checked the hallway. Nothing. The front door was locked. Every room was empty. But the feeling that someone had just walked by us didn't go away. That's when I started seeing her. Not fully, just out of the corner of my eye. A figure standing near the hallway, or near the kitchen window. Always where the light barely reached. The second time it was clearer. A woman. Hair clinging to the sides of her face. She was holding her arm out to the side, horizontally, almost like she was trying to gesture for attention. When I turned to look straight at her, she was gone. I didn't tell my girlfriend right away. She was already upset, already feeling blamed for something she couldn't control, but I started sleeping worse, feeling cold air across my chest at night, like someone was standing beside the bed. Then came the night it escalated. It was around 2 a.m., my girlfriend was sleeping beside me, and I was half awake. I heard the hallway creak again. Just one slow step, then another. I held my breath. There were more. Someone or something was walking slowly toward our bedroom door. Step by step, deliberate. I reached over to shake my girlfriend awake, but before I could touch her, knock, knock, knock. 3 knocks. Not on the door. On the wall above our heads. My girlfriend sat up instantly. "What was that?" We sat there in the dark, too stunned to move. Then the whispering started. It was coming from the hallway. I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like wet breathing, like someone mumbling while choking back water. I got out of bed slowly, reached for the door, and it swung open on its own. No wind, no draft, just opened. We didn't run. We couldn't. We just sat there, too afraid to move, until daylight crept in through the blinds. When we finally searched the apartment, there was nothing, no trace of anyone. We saged the place. We brought in someone who did energy cleansing. We don't even really believe in that stuff, but we were desperate. Things have been quieter since then, but sometimes I still think I hear her. At night, it's different out here. I live in a small rural town, maybe 600 people, give or take. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and houses sit far apart, surrounded by thick patches of woods. It's quiet, isolated, peaceful, depending on how you look at it. People out here don't like going out at night. They say it just feels Wrong. Too quiet. Too dark. Like the woods are watching. I never gave it much thought. Figured it was just nerves. You're alone in the middle of nowhere with no streetlights and too much silence. Of course it feels off. Until something happened that made me avoid nighttime drives altogether. A few months ago, I was coming home from a night shift. The road back to my house winds through backcountry. No lights, no traffic, nothing but trees and the occasional pair of glowing deer eyes. I was tired. Just focused on getting home without hitting an armadillo or a possum. That's when I saw something move in the rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was a shadow. Maybe I was just tired, seeing things. But then it moved again, faster, keeping up with the car. I glanced again. It was a man, a real person, running. He was older, balding, clothes dirty and baggy. He was chasing my car. I slowed down out of instinct. Out here, people help each other. If someone needs a ride or breaks down, you pull over. That's just what you do. I rolled my window down a bit and asked if he was okay. He was panting hard, like he'd run for miles. He told me his truck broke down a few roads back and he just needed a ride home. Said a friend was going to tow it in the morning. I was uneasy, but I told myself it was just social anxiety. This is what people do here, I thought, so I told him to hop in. He got in the back seat. As I drove, he gave me directions. I noticed it immediately. The smell. It hit me like a wall. Something foul, like rotten meat left out in the sun. Maybe roadkill. I tried to be polite. Maybe he was homeless or just had a rough night. But the longer we drove, the worse it got. Then, he reached forward and touched my hair. He kind of laughed and said, "Beautiful hair. My daughter had long hair like yours." Something about the way he said it chilled me. Like he was remembering someone he'd lost, or done something to. I laughed nervously and thanked him, trying to keep calm, trying to get this over with. We finally pulled up to his house, or what I think was his house. It was tucked into the woods, almost hidden by the trees. No porch lights, no signs of life, just blackness. He got out and started walking down the long path into the woods. I watched until I couldn't see him anymore. I was about to pull away. Then he came back. He came sprinting out of the woods, full speed, straight at my car. I panicked, locked the doors. He started pounding on the window, his expression twisted, like something inside him had snapped. He didn't look like the tired, lost man from before. He looked angry. I didn't wait. I floored it and tore out of there. I didn't stop driving for at least 15 minutes, checking my mirrors every few seconds. When I finally felt safe, I pulled over on a well-lit road to breathe. Then I noticed something in the back seat. He had left something behind. A bloodied condom and a gun. I don't know what he was planning to do, if I hadn't driven off, if I hadn't locked the doors, but I don't think it was just a ride he was looking for. I never called the police. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared they wouldn't believe me. Maybe I didn't want to think about what almost happened. But that man had a plan. And it wasn't good. Watching. About a week ago, I scrolled past a TikTok that said, "Always trust your gut, and every time you leave the house, lock the door and look around you." It sounded like just another overcautious reminder, the kind you hear and forget. But for some reason, it lodged itself in my head. I didn't know then how much it would matter. A few days later, I was heading out to meet some friends. Normal day, I was alone, so I locked the front door behind me, like always. But just as I stepped off the porch, that video echoed in my mind. "Trust your gut." I paused, looked around the front yard. Nothing, just the usual quiet. Still, something felt off. That strange low buzz in your stomach when you know something's wrong, but can't explain why. So I walked around to the back of the house. That's when I saw it. A car, parked maybe 30, 50 meters away. A dark sedan, idling. 2 men inside. They weren't talking. They weren't on their phones. They weren't moving, just staring at my house, at me. I froze. My pulse shot through the roof. I pulled out my phone to take a picture. Proof. Something. And the second I did, the car roared to life. They peeled off like they'd been caught doing something they shouldn't. It wasn't random. They weren't lost. They weren't waiting for anyone. They were watching. Here's the part that chills me deeper. 6 days before this, I'd been in a car crash. Not life-threatening, but serious. I flipped my vehicle. In the days leading up to that crash, I kept getting this uneasy, creeping feeling. I even told myself out loud once, "Take it easy. Don't rush." But I didn't listen. This time I did. I trusted the feeling. I listened to that small, quiet alarm going off inside me. And maybe that's the only reason I caught them. Maybe that's the only reason I'm okay. Now, I feel it again. That hum of danger. When I come home late. When the house creaks in the dark. When the wind sounds too much like footsteps. To the two men in that car. Whoever you were. Whatever you were planning. Let's not meet again. Across the street. When I was a kid, my step-grandparents lived at the end of a quiet, dead-end street in a small Oregon mountain town. Their house sat tucked near the woods, marked by a white guardrail striped with faded orange. There were only a few houses on the block, but one always stood out, older, darker, with an odd energy no one could quite name. It sat directly across the street. That's where she lived. Raquel. The first time we met her, it was almost dusk. My sister, stepbrother, and I were playing basketball outside when the chain-link gate across the street creaked shut. A girl, maybe a couple years older than us, came walking through. She wore glasses, had a kind of tomboy vibe, and introduced herself simply, "I'm Raquel. Can I play?" We were kids. We said sure. She played like any normal kid would. For almost a year it stayed like that. Just simple games, casual hangouts. But then something changed. One night, the three of us were up late playing Nintendo 64. Candy wrappers were everywhere. The kind of night only grandparents would allow. Around 1 a.m., we heard the rustle of the gate across the street. Curious, I crept to the window. There she was. Raquel. Red plaid pajamas, black hoodie, backpack, no shoes. It had rained earlier, and the ground was soaked, but she didn't seem to notice. We watched, frozen, as she climbed the fence and walked straight to the wooden rail at the end of the street. Then, without hesitation, she hopped it and vanished into the forest. She didn't come back, at least not that night. The next morning, as we were heading out for a lake day, I was taking out the trash and saw her sitting on her porch. Same hoodie, hood up, shoulders hunched, a full glass of something red in front of her. I waved. She didn't move, didn't blink, just glared, like I'd done something wrong. Later, we heard stories from other kids in town. One boy, Cage, told my sister he'd gone over to Raquel's once. They were in her basement with a couple friends, smoking. The others left to grab something upstairs. Raquel followed, then slammed the basement door and locked him in, pitch black. He said she laughed when she finally let him out. He never went back. A few months later, we visited again. Raquel seemed normal. She even invited us to a makeshift clubhouse she'd built in her yard. As kids, that was all it took. We went. Things were fine until I stepped outside to pee. That's when Raquel slipped out after me. She jammed a stick into the lock of the clubhouse door and unplugged the power, trapping my sister and brother inside. They screamed. I turned to her. She looked at me with a stare I'll never forget. Cold, empty, and smiling. "If you open that door," she said, "I'll hurt you." I ran, pulled the stick out and flung the door open. My sister grabbed Raquel and shoved her to the ground. That grin never left her face. We told our grandparents everything. They marched across the street and confronted Raquel's parents. Her mother broke down. She said Raquel had been acting strange, violent, distant. They'd taken her things away, found her using a Ouija board alone in the basement. She said Raquel would vomit violently in the middle of the night, that she'd wake up standing in corners, that she wasn't the same child anymore. As we left their porch, I looked back, and I swear I saw her watching us from the narrow basement window. Only, I don't think they were her eyes. They were too wide, too reflective, almost animal. Years passed. My mom and stepdad split, and we never went back to Oregon. Then, one night, 15 years later, I told this story at a cabin with my fiance's family. As I finished, my phone rang. Unknown number, Oregon area code. I hesitated. Everyone stared. Someone said, "Answer it." So I did. 3 seconds of high-pitched buzzing, then silence. The line went dead. No one said a word. I don't know what happened to Raquel, or that house, or what was in that basement, but I've never gone back to Oregon, and I don't plan to. A clueless kid. This happened in the 90s, back when I was 6 years old and living in Asia. At the time, child abductions were disturbingly common. Traffickers would snatch kids and sell them, sometimes to childless couples, sometimes into situations far worse. I didn't know all that as a kid, of course. All I knew was that I was staying at my aunt's place for a couple of weeks, while my parents were away on a trip. My aunt lived near a rural outdoor market. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Back then, kids could run around freely. I used to go look at the tanks of live seafood, get free snacks from the fruit vendors, or play hopscotch with neighborhood kids. I loved my summer vacations there. Fast forward to a few months ago, I'm in my 30s now, living in the US, and my aunt was visiting us. We were chatting and reminiscing, and I suddenly brought up something that had always stuck in the back of my mind. I remember. "You called the police, right? And the guy had a cleaver?" I remember being terrified. She gave me a strange look. "That's not what happened," she said. "You're remembering it wrong." Then she told me the real story. Apparently, while I was playing with a friend at the market, a woman approached us. She looked like any other auntie, a term we use in Asia for any older woman. So I didn't think twice when she offered me rice cakes and asked if I wanted to come with her. What I didn't realize was that no one at the market recognized her, and everyone at that market knew who I was. My aunt, being the cautious woman she is, had introduced me to all the vendors when I first arrived, and asked them to keep an eye on me whenever I played nearby. But I didn't recognize them back then, so to me, they were all strangers. But the vendors knew me. They noticed when I started walking away from the market with this unfamiliar woman, and my friend, bless his heart, immediately sensed something was wrong. He bolted to the nearest stall and shouted that I was being taken by someone he didn't know. That stall belonged to a fish vendor, a big guy with a cleaver in one hand and a half-gutted fish in the other. He dropped the fish, power walked, as my aunt described, straight toward the woman. As he approached, he saw a pickup truck parked nearby. Its back door was already open, waiting. The vendor didn't hesitate. He yanked me out of the woman's grip and started waving the cleaver in the air, shouting at her and anyone else in that truck. The woman backed off fast, jumped into the vehicle, and they sped off without saying a word. The police were called, but the truck was long gone. Turns out the memory I had of the man holding a cleaver trying to hurt me was backward. That man was actually saving my life. The fear I remembered was real, but I had confused who I was afraid of. Even now, the details are hazy, like they were stitched together wrong in my head. Trauma does that, I guess. But hearing the truth from my aunt, how quickly the fish vendor acted, how sharp my friend was to raise the alarm, it hit me hard. That day could have ended very differently. I was just a clueless kid who trusted a kind-looking stranger with free food. If it weren't for my friend and that vendor, I might have been driven away in that truck and never seen again. To this day, I'm unbelievably thankful for that man with the cleaver and the friend who didn't freeze. They saved me.